So welcome everyone for another Tools for Change webinar here with Nexus for Change. Theo Stiegler and Carol here for Nexus. Today is really intended to be just a conversation for all of us that are seemingly running from one virtual call to another. I learned the new term Zoom fatigue last week that I thought was a very apropos term that I certainly can feel how that and see how that would happen. So I want to invite you to just share with one another what some of the ways are that you are staying balanced and within your best self in this sort of new and different and strange time. And I just want to get us started and offer a couple of things that have worked well for me. And one of them is to open a meeting with a group in a manner that offers some music. I need to double check real quick, make sure that my computer sound is shared with you so that you can actually hear. And I just invite you for about 3 minutes to listen to Mr. Eldad Zitrin and wash his hands. Is the volume level okay? I hope that felt as good for you as it did for me, to just take a moment and just listen. One of the things that I would like to offer, and you'll probably recognize a theme here pretty quickly around where my heart is around some of the suggestions in how I balance myself. Something that comes out of sort of my practice of things like drum cafe, if you're familiar with it, an approach to get people together and collaborating through the use of drums. Oops, sorry. Come on, slideshow, cooperate. There we go. That's the one I wanted. One of the things that I sort of jokingly discovered with a friend, and then working with my brother, who's also a musician, and we came to this idea of singing together. What can we do in a virtual environment where we're always having to combat this idea of latency, right? So if I sing a note, by the time Barb hears it and responds to it and sings a note back, it's like da-da, there's like almost a whole second between the two. I've actually measured it. It's about a half second one way. So about a second round trip, depending on how good your connection is. When you are singing musics or engaging in musics that are based on a drone that aren't bound to or connected to as musical necessity to a repeating pulse of some sort, you don't have really an issue with latency. So I'm going to unmute all of you and invite you to this little exercise that you can do by yourself or with family. You can use as a drone to hum, sing, mumble along with your neighbor's lawnmower that's annoying you. You could use your fridge that's kicking on and making a sound that maybe you notice, maybe it irritates you. But I have found that rather than certain noises to be irritated with them, I'm like, how can I make music with that? And a lot of times if you have sort of a droney sound. So a thing that I offer that is out there on YouTube, there are loads of them. If you look for drone accompaniment or shruti, which is from Indian classical music, you can find like harmonium sounds that are maybe a little less, oh, that's Indian music. But I really like the sound of the tanpura, which is an Indian instrument that is really the sole purpose is to provide a consistent drone under a musical composition. So I invite you to just sing along however you see or feel fit to do so. I'm going to start this drone for us to sort of hum, sing, om along to, and unmute you all. There you go. And I'm going to try to adjust that volume so it's not too loud. Okay, what seems to happen on Zoom with that is that we can't always hear all of one another, that we only can hear sort of one or the other person coming in and coming out, which to me is sort of its own cool little musical experience. You know, ideally we would be able to hear everyone, but the Zoom processing does a thing that I call speaker priority, where basically whoever Zoom assumes to be, that's the person everybody's supposed to be listening to, that's where the resources go. And so you can, hopefully most of you were able to hear the drone as sort of the predominant sound, and then some of us coming in and out. So it's just a fun little exercise that again, I encourage you to try with your lawnmower sometime. The last thing I want to share is sort of what is it that I do, and the obvious one is that I need music to stay balanced. There's a little video clip that I offered here for folks around Holy Week and Passover time. Oh, because the audio is turned off.
The Son of Life divine, through passing clouds, shall but more brightly shine.
And so the cool thing was we met with the worship band that I lead, and we had people play along with it, and we tried to record the harmonica part for it, and did all that in Zoom. It sort of kind of works. It's not what you would ideally want when you're in a proper recording space together, but it was a good exercise and just good connection with my fellow friends and musicians. Wanted to share with you that for me, mindfulness meditation has been an important thing. And just if you know friends or colleagues, the Headspace app is currently available to nurses, healthcare staff in the US and in the UK for free. It's typically like I think it's $60, $70 or something as an annual subscription. But if you know healthcare professionals that you think might be supported with a mindfulness app that is pretty, I think, engaging and meaningful to follow along. Headspace offers both in the UK and the US currently that free subscription. So with that, I am done talking and just want to open it up to all of you. Martin, who I met last week, responded to my Twitter post and said that what he does is a whole package of things: breaks, exercise, music, laughter, time outdoors, chatting with friends, and making good food. What are some of the things that are important to you for us to stay sane in all of this?
Can anyone jump in, or
anyone jump in?
All right.
Yes, this is an
we
open
don't know if you're
conversation.
raising hands or
No, I don't think there's not so many of us. There's about 14 of us here, so feel free to unmute yourself and share. If I have to cut somebody off and give somebody else the mic, I'll do that, but I don't think that's necessary.
Well, first, Theo, I really enjoyed your musical muse. I found it very calming. I listened to it a number of times, and I'm curious about the program. I can talk to you some about that, but music, I happen to constantly use as many different mediums of artistic mediums, that I can. And I find myself shuttling, to my studio, and literally at 2:30, 3, 4 in the morning, and drawing and doing my art, because that is a way of pacifying, getting both feelings, emotions, all kinds of things out. And I would do these things. I did many of them for the Rocky Mountain News over years and years. They were called truisms. They were my way of seeking and seeing truths, personal, universal truths, and capturing the essence through a statement picture and a picture statement, right? So next time we get on, I'll show you examples of them. I put some in my books, and because I use them as a way to kind of get at the essence of a feeling or a thought. And I realized how invaluable it is to help people express themselves. And I do this constantly, where I make various kinds of symbolic models. Okay, that's something I do, and using many different mediums to work and to convey an idea, a concept, a theory, point of view, something. And maybe after I will find one to show you, but it helps both in the act of being creative, in the act of thinking about a problem or a challenge or an issue or a topic, a subject, something. It enables you to give form to your feelings and thoughts and ideas and views. And that very act can be very soothing and very calming. And also you can get at emotions. I don't know about how many of you when you're watching and how much news you watch, but we click between lots of channels from BBC to MSNBC to the whole bandwidth, and I know that I start feeling like I itch. I start getting like hives listening to and trying to sort out what's real, what isn't, but it's very difficult. And so that alone produces a lot of anxiety. And when you have to facilitate workshops, when you have to engage people and kind of immediately get into their souls and minds, you find that one of the first things is to try to deal with where their state of mind is at that moment, or emotions and things. So anyway, the arts are just such powerful tools, and you do it through your music and your experiences in engaging people through that medium. And we try to use all of these different tools to do that, and begin with a simple thought of how do you feel, or not like what you think about innovation or what you think about teaching or any, just how do you feel? How would you show it and describe it and demonstrate it? So I will be quiet and hear from Becky and Barb and RG, right? And Linnea. It's very good to meet you all. And I'm very curious to hear what your experiences are and the kinds of tools and methods and thoughts you have about that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Anybody want to jump in and respond to that? Can you relate to it? Can you dig it? Can you, whatever, however you want to express it?
Yeah, I'll jump in. I can relate to that. I think that, paying attention to feelings is essential for just staying grounded and being aware of, how whatever space I'm in is affecting me, and so that I can respond appropriately to the different contexts and people that I'm, moving through. Because otherwise, the Zoom rooms have an odd similarity to them that I don't get the same cues and preparation time that
right.
I would get if I'm going to a building with a certain meeting. And so it's a bit of a jolt to the system. And I find that paying attention to feelings throughout that is essential. Another thing that I've been doing lately, as I've been having a lot more Zoom meetings, is I will, if something's going on that I don't like, but I don't really want to interfere, I'll listen to music while I'm listening to people talk. And I won't necessarily tell people that I'm doing that, because, we're creating our own atmosphere essentially. And I found that when I do that, sometimes it really helps me get out of my, annoying mindset of like, I hate this meeting, shut up, shut up, shut up. And I kind of, changes my mood. And then even if sometimes it's just for 10 minutes, I go back and then I can bring all my focus back into the meeting. And I've found that has changed things significantly at times.
Mm.
I love that. I'm going to have to steal it, but let me know if you want me to edit that out of this recording in case.
So you don't have to edit it for me.
I would love to sort of touch on that. Is there something for you guys that has to do specifically with, this reality of these constant virtual meetings? I've talked about music and mindfulness. I think those are things that I did before that I do now that I hope to do when we get back to whatever that new normal is going to be. I have made a sort of a pact, is too strong a word, but I'm trying to do at least one meeting every week where I'm just participating, where I don't have to worry about a share screen or a chat box or anything, where I can just let me be a participant and not always the educator, facilitator, co-host, whatever. What are some things that you guys are doing specifically around this new reality that we're all interacting in, maybe? Or other things, by all means, just one thought that I was interested in.
I don't know if I have a solution, but the challenge I have is that when I'm online, I feel kind of locked into this position. And I see, James is sitting in his chair and he's, like leaning back, but I don't feel like I can do that. And so I feel stiff. And of course, if my eyes are not quite level, then I get a stiff neck. And that was never the case when I worked even 40 hours a week in a job in a cubicle. So the challenge is how to keep moving. So one thing I'm doing is I'm trying to take a walk every day, but I need to do more than that because I feel like this is impacting my posture and just, so I don't know if I just need to turn my screen off and then move every now and then or lay down and do yoga while I'm listening to a meeting. I don't know what, but anyway.
There's an idea. I like that one.
I've thought about it, but I haven't dared to do it.
Well, I've got a decent balance between Zoom meetings and other work, so I'm doing okay with regards to it, but I assist others. In fact, I do a Zoom training now once a week for all of our staff, and I'm hearing from them that they're just having Zoom burnout, that, from 8 in the morning till 6 or 7 at night, they're just going from one Zoom meeting to the next Zoom meeting to the next Zoom meeting. The only thing that I've been able to offer them, and that's partly why I was excited about this conversation today. So far, I've just offered them to really think if that meeting needs to be on Zoom. We forget that we have a telephone that we can pick up and just have a phone call, where you don't have to have the visual piece and just talk to somebody. But so far, that's been my only tip, but I like some of the suggestions that other people have. I'll be passing those along.
I think the more informal it is, the better, because when people are sitting around tables and they're constricted, or what Barb described, where you feel like it's like you're sitting in an opera hall, and if you ever watch the lights go out, you'll notice all of the people nodding out and they, feel structured there like that. But I do find that the interactions I have, the more spontaneous, where I'm drawing, I'm getting stuff, or someone's getting a coffee or whatever, and it's really relaxed, the more enjoyable, the more you can immerse, and the more relaxed it is. So to the extent that you can do that, obviously we're all strangers for the most part, so it's tough, but as you come to know people and you feel comfortable, to the degree you feel that way, you can enable others to be that way too. So, but you're right, it's very easy. We had a Passover the other day, 2 of them back to back. So you got a real people from all over the planet, and we're all together and stuff, which I thought was going to be really dull, but it was kind of cool because you saw people transgenerational, all different, a real amalgam, and to watch the interaction and stuff where you could go into little breakout sessions. I thought that was kind of interesting. It was surprising. Anyway, it's good, but informal works much better.
I have very intentionally created 2 separate sort of workspaces. And if you have the luxury to like, I can work over here, but I can also work on the porch or whatever weather allowing. I have, like, this space that we're in together right now is sort of my a little bit more formal space, where I make sure that the background doesn't have any dirty clothes and this and that. But then I have downstairs, and actually in the kitchen on the dining room table, is my music workspace for, I have instruments around and things in that. And so I intentionally will, even if I'm not working on music, let me go downstairs to that other space, different environment, different seating arrangement. And I look forward to maybe when we don't have hail and snow outside mixed in with the sun, that even, okay, this is a meeting, I'm going to just sit on the back porch with just my laptop.
I'm finding this is a wonderful time to experiment.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm feeling Zoom fatigue, chances are the people I'm on the call with are feeling the same. So I'm taking page out of Todd's book to be a little informal and inclusive, and not just take care of myself
Mhm.
by moving around, but inviting the whole group to move around. So there's two things that I've done recently, more than once. So the first is this, Teo, you can laugh at me. It's a shaky exercise.
Yeah.
And you just invite people.
Right.
Oh, it really feels good. It doesn't take very long. It doesn't take very long before you start feeling good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or, or if you feel as though your relationships are a little bit more formal, then just invite people to a shrug like this. Like this. And you'll be surprised how much that changes
Absolutely.
the energy. The other thing is something that each of us has done, I'm sure, in person, which is some ritualistic opening or closing, whether it's a check-in, like recently a chorus that got together before doing some rehearsing virtually. They invited their cats and dogs to be in the screen with them, and people just laughed.
Yeah.
It's another feel, and then again the energy. So the Zoom fatigue becomes Zoom joy.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's really wonderful. You reminded me of something. I just have to say, when I would have to do like a keynote or something, you may have a large audience, get them out of the seat, and they're wiggling around like that. And they really get the wiggles out. When people are coughing or whatever, you get them like that. And the moment everyone is in that relaxed space, they're listening differently. They're feeling the space very, very differently. So to the extent that you can get in that state of mind fast, that's really helpful. And especially for this particular medium, I do find that it's so constrained in so many ways. And actually another thing too, by contrast, you can get people to say, okay, really constrain yourself so you can kind of imagine. So when they do relax, they really have that counterpose. So that's cool.
I have another thing that I do that I want to bring in, which is that, and it's a little more appropriate for more of an intimate space, but I find people feel like they don't like the Zoom because it's alienating. It's like having a wall in between people,
right.
Particularly because of the eye contact issue. And so I do an exercise to help us become aware of the difference between looking at our screen and looking at our camera. And so I might say to someone, I'll try it like with you, Todd, I'll say, Todd, so I'm looking at the camera and I'm thinking of you, and I'm inviting you to look at my video to just have a sense of looking into my eyes. Yes. And then I'm going to switch, and now I'm going to look at your video and invite you to look into your camera to give me a sense of making eye contact with you.
That's wonderful too.
I love
or
it.
Reaching out. When you reach out, you go to touch like that. Anything to break a space, to break the psychological imperative, that virtual wall that people have there.
So I made a hack about that. How Zoom, you can look at the speaker in one screen, and then there's the Zoom gallery with all the people. So right. I made the second person, whoever's talking, I make that person really small, put it right up by my camera, that when I'm looking at their video, looks like I'm looking at them. The other thing I did was I made this little paper thing go around my camera, which says look here and smile to remind myself.
Yeah, very cute.
Because they are looking at me, and
absolutely.
I'm like,
that is awesome.
The problem with that is that, again, I get locked into just looking. Yeah. In the real world, I'm looking around and picking up my stapler or whatever.
Absolutely. Well, the other thing too is, I don't know how many of you use, I presume, FaceTime. I happen to like it because you can do all kinds of funny stuff and carrying it around with you and have a completely different kind of interactivity that is beautiful. It's very spontaneous and funny. And this tends to be, you know, you can't carry your iMac around or whatever systems you're on. So it's a different feel, but the other, somehow using it in combination could be really cool. So like
So I
I'm
think
watching
that
Carol now, who's very busy. I see, very busy, you know, sandwiched between the walls of books.
Mm-hmm.
but I love that idea. I think I'm gonna have intentional sessions where I tell people, okay, this is one that you need to log in on your mobile device. We're not going to use any screen share or any, you know, like this half-hour session is mobile and go somewhere and keep moving.
Absolutely.
So that's, thank you. Yeah, there's some great ideas here.
Yeah, it's anything to encourage the spontaneity, I think, and informality. It gets at the authenticity piece. All of those relax us, you know, as opposed to the other, I think. So.
And Archery, thank you for that wiggle thing, because I like when I do longer engagements and facilitate like conference sessions, I do, you know, movement things, but for some reason that hadn't crossed my mind for Zoom, because I think of it as separate things, where my day and a lot of your day is the same as those conference sessions where I would, okay, let's take a break. Let's, you know, all the stuff that as good facilitators, we try to encourage people to do. Why aren't we doing it in this format? Or I am at least hopefully now going to start doing it more intentionally. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I would love, Stuart, Karen, Peggy, Jason, those of you that we can't currently see, do you have any thoughts? I want to make sure that we get your voices in. Renee, I don't think you've spoken yet. Linnea, if you have something that you want to share and offer, we would love to hear that.
I don't have anything just yet.
Okay, fair enough. Hi, Renee.
Good to be here.
It is good to be here. So yeah, a minute ago I looked like I was in San Francisco, but I actually am in a situation a lot like what's in Todd's background. I got kind of caught in lockdown in Goa, India.
Oh,
so
beautiful.
It is beautiful. It's also very far away, and it's getting a little stranger by the day. And I will say that the dogs are wild and getting hungrier on the beach, and the young men are getting hornier, and so all sorts of strange things are happening. I have my door open to the beach, and I get wild animals wandering in every once in a while too. So that keeps things interesting. So I am in constant contact with folks, and you know, my communities, we pretty much usually start with a wonderful, heartfelt centering and check-in, which just seems to be so important. And also to just ask people what's going on in their current environment. Where are you? Where are you sitting? Where's your child? What are you having to navigate right now? You know, and so that we really hold each other in our humanity and with a lot of empathy for what we're juggling, to be able to really be present to each other. And let me see, I think I'm just trying to think of other things that, because I've been trying to ask people, you know, what's been working for you? What's not working? I love the idea of go ahead and put yourself on just the photo and do the yoga postures, get up, and move around. I get a chance to run out and jump in the Arabian Sea in between my Zoom calls, you know, but I also, there's a lot of dance classes that are delightful and laughter yoga that are being offered online, and just little, you know, in the middle of the day. I mean, my biggest challenge has been to sort of schedule in very conscious breaks and, you know, things that feed me back in all sorts of wonderful ways. And then let me see. Yeah, some of that kind of stuff. And thank you, Theo, for setting the context. And with the drone, of course, that was perfect because it was in the Indian tradition. So I felt kind of right at home here. Thank you very much.
You're most welcome. Yeah, I'm doing an ecstatic dance online tonight. And any of you that know me a little bit be like, what? Theo?
I'll be there. I'm
Really?
being there. I'm going to be there too.
I want to
Where?
just quickly
Which one? Good.
It's One Spirit is offering it as an online session.
Yeah. Okay.
I'd be happy to send you a link, Linnea, if you'd like. But
Yeah.
it's middle of the night, I think, for you. I just want to check in real quick. We were set for 45 minutes. I'm more than happy. I love this conversation. If you're able to stick around. It looked like Stuart was going to share something, which I absolutely want to hear. But I just want to be aware, like, if you do have to leave at 45, please feel free to do so. I'm going to continue recording if folks want to stick around and chat a little longer. And we'll share that, and you'll all have an email in your inbox. I'm not promising it tomorrow, but by the weekend's end, with the recording and some more info. So Stuart, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Theo. And please do send me the link about ecstatic dancing. So I was doing what somebody suggested earlier, which is periodically just hanging back and being a participant, because I find that I've been expending a lot of energy, like everybody else. Things to provide balance, to try and vary things during the day, to make sure that exercise every day, to make sure you get outside. Gardening, my plants get just absolutely amazing, meticulous attention during this period of time. I planted a little victory garden, and it's really interesting to see lettuce, watching lettuce grow. It's a wonderful activity. And all the things that everybody else suggested, but what I also noticed, and I was doing a little bit of writing and sharing, I had a bit of a meltdown late last night, after probably one too many glasses of port. And no matter how much I think that we pay attention, we're going to have some meltdowns. There's a way in which it's a great time of grieving. We don't realize, we don't see it as grieving, but there's a letting go of a life that was. And we don't really know what it's going to be on the other side. And so, just to be mindful that we're in this period of transition. And, it may be a little early to start even envisioning a future. So we're in this place of bardo, and the idea of getting used to a bit of not knowing, I think, is something that we all need to get used to and be okay with.
Good point, really. Yeah.
Thank you
Stuart.
for that, Stuart.
I wanted to offer that.
Can I ask a quick question, Stuart?
Absolutely. Let me just really quickly respond to Stuart as a thank you to you, Stuart. We had a session last week, 2 weeks ago, that you were part of, and it struck me like a lightning bolt that, hey, Theo, you haven't written any poetry probably in a good decade. Why the heck not? So thank you sort of for that jolt that came from that interaction with you. Go ahead, Renee.
You're welcome. And if you want me to share a poem before we
that would be lovely.
And I'm happy to do that.
That would be lovely. The link for the ecstatic dance is in the chat for all of you. If you want to look at that or consider partaking, please do. Renee, go ahead. You had a question for Stuart.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Stuart, I really appreciate that. I've been in that place a lot. People talk about going back. I'm like, what back? Why back? There's nothing back there. I mean, it's like, what? It is such an amazing opportunity to, one, be really, really present, and then two, be thinking better and forward. And I just, as a person that lives in process and change world all the time, it's like, this is a beautiful moment in the midst of all this chaos. There's beauty in that opportunity. So I really appreciate you sharing that. There was a term you used that I'm not familiar with. You said bardo?
Yeah. Bardo is the place between life and wherever you're going after life.
Okay.
It's usually used in that quote religious. Mostly, I've heard it in a Christian context.
Okay. Okay.
But it's an in-between space.
In between space. Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Really
You're welcome. Mhm.
Yeah, the poetry, Stuart, it'd be great to hear a poem. The poetry is a wonderful bridge and really a between bridge in a beautiful way of the surreal and the real and all of that good stuff. So if you have a poem that you
Great.
are,
Yeah, I'll share it now. And by the way, just as a context, between 2000 and 2003, about 500 poems emerged out of me. And I sat on them. And then in 2010, I had them transcribed and edited. And I've been kind of noodling with them since. And within the next 6 months, they will be finally done. And I will publish a volume of poetry, one poem a day, with reflective questions. And you can find a lot of them, some of them not quite in the final version, on pilgrimspath.life. Pilgrimspath.life. So here's yesterday's poem that I think has some messages for the time we're in. It's called Faith. Faith. Life is learning, following your yearning, inspiring rebirth, revealing worth. Longing peace, minimize loss, stay away from remorse. Don't lose childlike play, things rearrange every day. Achievement income drives our world, seeks solace in a mindless swirl. Changes come fast and deep, changes too hamper sleep. Clutch what calms emotion, belonging on a world in motion. Myth of control, knowing what's so, again and again, letting go. Emerge from a chrysalis state, see the world with a clean slate. Sorry, there is no big plan. Let life reveal what it can.
nice. Nice.
Thank you.
Namaste.
Please send it, Stuart.
I'll put it in the chat and you can copy it from the chat, okay?
Okay, thank you.
That'd be actually fun to share poems that we've had over our lives. That'd be fun to have a mutual share like that, because they do reach a lot of the points that people have raised here. And Renee, you're absolutely right on about embracing all of the uncertainty and really understanding, growing with it as opposed to fearing it. That most people are fearing this unknown period as we move and transition, and understanding that chaos and embracing it in some respects.
So I don't want to be Debbie Downer, but I'm so grateful for this group, and yet feel a sense that we are so privileged. We can have this conversation.
Yeah.
What about those who don't have enough to eat?
Yeah.
And that polarity is becoming so evident to me in the sense of helplessness, because we have this support group that is becoming more and more broad out of this catastrophe, which is a real positive. Mateo and I are in constant calls with people who are offering services using our tools. But what about the people who don't have electronic connection and are in tiny places? And I heard this week about students in a local university who were sleeping in their cars.
Mm.
And the other side of that is Bowling Green has provided housing for the students. So I want to end on a positive note, but I think that's that really strikes me as you spoke, how important at least holding both sides is.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm complete.
Thank you for saying that, Carol. You know, every time I complain a little, and in the people I'm in conversation with that are thoughtful folks, you know, anybody who's complaining says, and these are very privileged challenges. Yeah. And I also want to say one more thing, is that what I didn't read were the reflective questions after that poem, which are perfectly congruent with today's conversation, because the question was, how do you maintain equanimity, and what throws you off, and what keeps you on track? And I think those are two important things to keep in your consciousness during this slice of time.
Yeah, I'd like to add one other layer to that is, I think some of the most profound things to come out of this period now are, I don't see people taking anything for granted. You know, we are constantly blindsided. We're having to really look at our vulnerability. And I think that piece feeds into the larger humanity piece element. Linnea, when you were talking about that experience in India, as you are in India, I remember I had spent a good 7 months there in Madras, outside Besant Nagar, living on the beach. And let me tell you, it was the most humbling phenomenon. I was on a Fulbright fellowship, and I'm telling you, they gave us a little book to try to prepare for that experience. I just tossed it away. There's nothing to prepare your brain, you know, and it was so phenomenal, because you realize how precious, like all these things so much of us take for granted, are, and you have a whole nother experience, seeing everything anew every day, you know. So that was a big lesson, big learning, and I see it more and more when people enable themselves to be fragile, and recognize that that's the deeper connection with all of us. So anyway.
I could use a little prayer, a little fingers crossed to get home safely. That would be really nice. It's just really not, it hasn't been possible. So the flights everything just keeps canceling, and it's another month away and another month away. And it's a little scary out here. So little prayers would be great. Thank you.
Linnea and Arjorie have posted in the chat some thoughts on how do we grieve together, since you know, we don't really have opportunities to do that in the ways that we're accustomed to. So Linnea, maybe even in the meantime, just an idea to throw out, maybe you and Arjorie, and I would love to maybe be a facilitator on that if you'd like to you know, co-author a blog post or something that we could share on our respective spaces on that matter. I think that's something that's meaningful. James, you offered, I think it looks like an audio recording of you reading a poem in the chat also.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it connects to what you were just saying. I wrote it in an online grief circle, and so I'm also interested in that topic. I found that, to my surprise, a lot of my creativity came out as a result of doing that grief work.
Yeah, my best songs were really sad ones, so that makes sense. Yeah, so I'd love to, if there are things like that you want to connect around, I'm happy to be a conduit to share, you know, contact information with one another if you all are interested in those specifics. I'll probably, this was way more. I wanted to say thank you. This is way more than I expected out of the session. I appreciate all of you being here. I'm grateful for Carol, who is, I know, taking notes and jotting down ideas to hopefully share this back with all of us. And I hope that this can maybe be one of those little sparks that somebody somewhere stumbles across the session or the video of it and get something meaningful out of it for their day. a month from now. So thank you all for being here. It's 5 till the top. Some of you probably have another session to go to at the top of the hour. So take 5 minutes to do a yoga pose or get another cup of coffee or whatever else you need to do. Thank you all for being here. Have a fantastic rest of your day and a beautiful weekend.
Thank you everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye bye.
everybody.